Well, on page 77, the first thing we come to is a timeline, just kind of putting things in perspective. Those first dates, I've got the word written there, about 4000 BC. That is so debatable, and I'm just going through the genealogy, counting back through the Bible, and come up with about that date. Once you get into archaeology or anthropology, geology, some of these dates are hard to go with and understand, and I don't have the resources myself to go out and find them out, so I'm just going through what the Bible says. Once we get up on that timeline, once we get up to right around the time of 1100 BC, Samuel, Saul, David, those are still debated, but then of course everything's debated. The very fact that we're sitting in this room tonight could be debated by some philosophy, some that we really may not be here. So just because someone's debating it doesn't mean it's an intelligent debate. But those numbers there, Samuel, Saul, David, are pretty solid. Those are pretty much, if you're conservative, those are defendable. Then you get down into the time of like Jeremiah's ministry, 586, 605. By that time, you've got contemporary history from that very same time, written documentation from other cultures verifying these same facts. And we know that we are, well, even look right there, the temple rebuilding completed March 12th, 516 BC. That's a pretty solid date. And again, people are going to argue with all of it. Let's just walk through there very quickly and kind of see what we've got. Adam, around about 4000 BC. And again, I would not want to bet my eternal salvation on that date, but that's what I've printed. Enoch, 3400 BC. Noah's flood around 2400 BC. Again, that Noah's flood is a unique situation. We're going to talk about it tonight, but if the flood happened as the Bible says it did, and I believe that, the topography of the earth is going to change. There were no mountains before, and there were mountains afterwards. There's going to be water that's going to be dispersed in places that wasn't dispersed. There's going to be more water on the earth after the flood than before the flood, and we'll show you some of those things. So the world before Noah's flood is really a different earth than what we have today. And that's going to throw scientists off, and that's going to throw the dating off when they begin to put these things in perspective. Again, that I'm coming at this from a Bible teacher. I'm not a geologist. I'm not an anthropologist. I'm just putting these things together. We'll look at some of them tonight. Tower of Babel around 2300 BC. Notice it's about 100 years after the flood, and that's within Bible dating. Abraham, right around that time, you see 2166, basically 2000 BC is the time of Abraham. And that lines up with so many other things. The book of Genesis that we've got on the positive side, on the defense of it, on the conservative side, the cultures that are listed and described in the book of Genesis are the culture and the peoples that were around in that time period. So again, it's not like some book that was written many years later reflecting back. It was written at the very time or the documents that we've got. So again, I'm very comfortable with these dates here. Jacob, you can see 2006 to 1859. Joseph, right around the year, where am I at here? Yeah, 1950 would be about the time he's born. Again, we don't know the exact date he's born. Moses and the Exodus. Now this comes down, we'll talk about more of this next week. There's a late date and an early date for the Exodus. The more conservative traditional date is around 1446. Take 40 years in the wilderness. Now you're at 1406, and they're kind of getting ready to go into the Promised Land about that time. There's another date that goes back around 1200 BC. That moves it up 200 years closer. And some people like that. They call Ramses the Pharaoh at this time. But if you look, well, let me just tell you just a little heads up on this one. The Pharaoh of this time, and we're way off base already, or sometimes spelled like this. The Pharaoh of the time around 1446 was the Thutmose family. Now, I'm not sure if that means anything to you right now, but there's Thutmose the first, Thutmose the second, Thutmose the third. And when Moses left Egypt and left the position of the crown prince, the royal palace, he would have dropped the name of the god off of his name. Moses. Does that make sense? And I mean, that's Egyptian history right there. Moses just kept his name, just dropped the name of Thut, the god. It means Thut has given birth, or Thut has gone. That's later on in the book. So again, that's huge. Also, that would, if you get National Geographic, I'm way off base. National Geographic, Hatshepsut is covered this month. Yeah. Hatshepsut would have been the Pharaoh's daughter who took Moses out of the Nile. Yeah. Hatshepsut, and that's in this. I got this detailed in this book already. But that would have been, and Thutmose the third was her not her son, but her husband, Thutmose II's, harem son, who then she moved out of the way and she began to reign, and Moses was her choice. Well, Moses then ends up having a situation with the slave masters, and what ends up happening is Thutmose III then comes in, and after Moses' episode, Hatshepsut is removed within 12 months, and you can follow that through the timeline here. And Thutmose III, they know, this is in every Egyptian book, I mean, this is all about Hatshepsut, he removed her name. There's pictures in National Geographic of where her name was chiseled out of the hieroglyphics, off of the monuments. And people say, well, there's no evidence of Moses ever being in Egypt. It's like, right, there's barely any evidence of Hatshepsut because of Thutmose III, who was trying to remove them. If he tried to remove his royal mother, or who was the queen, the prince, actually the king, she ruled as a king, he would definitely have gone after Moses. But nonetheless, that stuff just keeps piling up. Nonetheless, that's the time of Moses, 1446. They cross around 1406 into the Promised Land. Judges, 1380. Then we come down. Samuel, Saul begins to reign. David begins to reign. Solomon begins to reign. Judah, they split in 931 B.C. Elijah, right around 870. The Assyrians conquer northern Israel in 722 B.C. And again, that's interesting, 722 B.C. All of the great prophets, guys like Isaiah, Amos, Micah, all of these guys were prophesying around 760 or 780 to 760, 40 years before the northern Israel was, I mean, they were the prophets of the last generation saying, wake up, you're going down. And they were all contemporaries prophesying at the same time, leading up to that destruction. Isaiah ends up going down into Judah as they were also, some of them were also from there. But nonetheless, that's interesting there. That date matches up with many things. Then Jeremiah's ministry to the southern kingdom of Judah, 726 to 584. He saw 3 captivities from the Babylonians as he told them they were coming. Finally, Jerusalem, or the southern kingdom of Judah, is destroyed in 586 BC by the Babylonians. Daniel spends the years 605 to 530 in Babylon. The return from captivity is around 538. Notice right there, Daniel spent the last 8 years back in Babylon, even as the exiles are setting up with Zerubbabel and everybody's setting up over in Judah again. The temple rebuilding is completed in 516. And again, if you figure this out, the temple was destroyed in 586. All these dates work out. The temple was destroyed in 586. The temple was rebuilt 70 years later, just as Jeremiah said. Queen Esther, 474. Ezra goes to Jerusalem in 485. Nehemiah completes the wall October 2nd, 445. And we can see the remains of this building. And Malachi ends up in 430. That is just a quick timeline of putting those things in perspective.